Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. Our panel returns today to discuss the latest economic and political issues. The Honorable Joe Oliver is a former federal Minister of Finance and Minister of Natural Resources. The Honorable Gary Marr is a former Alberta Cabinet Minister and Alberta agent in Washington, D.C. He now heads the Canada West Foundation. And of course, Sandra Pupatello is a former Ontario Economic Development and Trade Minister. And we welcome all of you. Thanks for coming on the panel again today.
Nice to see everybody.
I guess my first question is going to be big picture. 2023 is almost over. Love to get your sense of what each of you think are the largest political and consequential political and economic stories for 2023. Joe Oliver, do you want to start us off?
Okay, the biggest political event this year, I would have to say domestically, was the decline and fall of the popularity of the Liberal government, and particularly the Prime Minister. The bloom is definitely off the rose, and while one can never be definitive about political projections, it sure looks like the Prime Minister is not in a position to come back from a disastrous decline in the polls. It's double digits now, and I understand the Liberals are tied, depending on the poll, with the NDP, and the Conservatives are 10, 12 points behind. So it's pretty hard to see how that can how the Prime Minister can recover, and a lot of people are talking about the proverbial walk in the snow. From an economic perspective, it's been a transformational sort of year. It looks like inflation has been beaten down because of the monetary policy of the central bank. Interest rates were pushed up, and it had the economic effect, in spite of the continued profligacy of the federal government and its fiscal policies. The markets were up only very modestly, about 4% in Canada, 21%, I think it was, in the United States, but that's almost all attributable to the Magnificent Seven technology companies. And so if you took them out of the mix, actually the U.S. performance was comparable to the Canadian performance. Everyone is still waiting for the much heralded recession. I think it's coming, and it probably won't be a deep one. We're hoping for a soft landing and for the markets to take off. The longer term problem, which is a shorter term problem as well, of course, in Canada, is very poor productivity, and that's another big subject we can discuss if you'd like.
Sandra, do you want to give us your perspective?
Sure. Well, I think looking back on the last year, the biggest issue has been the economy, and that sort of goes right across economic, political discussions. Who's at fault? Who's causing it? Canada's a trading nation, so we are buffeted by what is going on in the world, and this was a very good year to show that that's in fact the case. So I do think that as we go into next year, we're going to see more difficulties faced by businesses and people who have their mortgages renewing. It's a 5-year term for most people, and we're only not even 20% of the way through that group. And even if they've decided to hold the interest rates, and the Bank of Canada is saying that maybe they go down sometime in 2024, 25, those who are renewing are still going to see 2, 3, 4% higher interest rates than they're currently spending. And that's going to be a big impact on them. Anecdotally, we're hearing how business is being affected. I think we'll see very clearly next month when the CEBA loans are due, who's defaulting, who's paying it out, and that'll be a very good indication of how quickly people are coming out of this pandemic or the lows of the last 4 years. to Joe's point, I kind of disagree. People have discounted the strength of the prime minister ever since his nomination battle. When he first had to fight a nomination battle, they thought, "Oh, here's the son of the former prime minister," and he really slogged it out and won that. And even his boxing match with Brazeau, they counted him out and thought he'd be on the floor. In fact, he won in about less than 3 rounds.
Yeah,
so
no, that's right.
I think there's lots of time between now and an election.
Sure.
That aside, I don't think people are talking about that. I think they're worried about housing prices, mortgage payments. And
We're
I think
have
that'll
to take
continue
a brief break, and we'll hear from Gary Marr after that break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.